Morace the Freelancer. The city of Neo Jersey unfurled below like a neon serpent, its scales glinting with the artificial light that battled against the eternal twilight of Titan. Towers soared high, piercing through the dense methane clouds, their apexes crowned with holographic billboards that danced in an endless loop of advertisements and public announcements. The streets, lined with luminescent paint that guided automated traffic, pulsed with life as hovercrafts zipped past, leaving trails of ionized particles in their wake. The vast dome overhead simulated a sky, a poor facsimile of Earth's, yet it held back the chill of space and the toxic atmosphere beyond. Saturn loomed large on the horizon, a constant reminder of the celestial giant around which their lives orbited. Moritz, with his rugged build and the weathered lines etched into his face from years of manual labor, was a son of this moon. His skin bore the pale tint common to those who had never felt the warmth of Sol's unfiltered rays, and his eyes, accustomed to the half-light, missed no detail of his surroundings. He navigated the crowded walkways of Neo Jersey with an air of someone used to keeping to himself, the weight of survival pressing down on his broad shoulders. The bar he entered lay on the fringes of the entertainment district, where the glitter of Neo Jersey faded into the shadows. Its sign, a flickering hollow image of a grinning imp, was a beacon for the desperate or the foolish. Inside, the atmosphere was thick, not just from the recycled air, but from the tension that hung amongst the patrons. Alien species mingled with humans, a menagerie of forms and intents. There were the Arcturians with their shimmering blue skin, huddled in the corner booth whispering conspiracies. A group of human outlaws sporting cybernetic enhancements laughed raucously over a shared joke. And a lone Nogrit, its chitinous exoskeleton, clinking against the bar as it sipped a drink made from imported Jovian ice. Morace moved with a certain unease, aware that every being in this place was sizing him up for opportunity or threat. A human male raised among the dregs of society, he knew how to navigate this world. Yet, there was a weariness to him, as if each step was a calculated risk in a game where the odds were never in his favor. His hand instinctively brushed the empty spot on his belt, where a communicator ring might have been, a nervous habit from better times. He settled on a stool at the far end of the bar, apart from the others, his back against the wall. From here he could watch, wait, and plan his next move, while the symphony of Neo Jersey's underworld played on around him. Morris's heart hammered against his ribcage as the men closed in. Gruff hands seized him, hauling him off the stool with such force that his drink clattered to the floor, spilling its contents into a small river of neon liquid that snaked through the grime on the tiles. The bar erupted into laughter, not at the wasted drink, but at the spectacle of Morace struggling feebly against the assailants who had emerged from the shadows like predators. Enough! The voice cut through the cacophony, sharp and commanding. Savalti stepped forward, the gang leader's silhouette framed by the dim lighting of the bar. His cold eyes, shaded beneath a heavy brow, fixed on Maurice with an intensity that could freeze blood. The men released their grip, shuffling back with a mixture of fear and respect. Morace, Savalti said, his tone level but laced with a threat that was understood by all who heard it. You have 2 days, 48 standard hours, to repay your debt. 30,000 Utahs. The surrounding patrons returned to their drinks, their chuckles fading into murmurs. They knew better than to intervene in Savalti's business. Or what? Morace rasped, though he already knew the answer. Or you'll vanish. Savalti's smirk was devoid of humor. And no one will find even a speck of you? With a dismissive wave, Savalti turned away. The message was clear. Pay up or disappear forever. Once outside, Morace felt the weight of Saturn's gaze from above, its rings casting an eerie glow over Neo Jersey. He needed a plan, resources. He needed to communicate. Fingers trembling, he traced the contour of his index finger where a ring should have sat. It wasn't just any ring. It was a lifeline, the ubiquitous tool everyone carried. The communicator ring, comring for short, was a marvel of miniaturization, capable of projecting crisp holograms into the air, facilitating calls, and much more. Sidodva, he muttered under his breath. The acronym stood for Synthetic Electronic Data and Operational Virtual Assistant, an AI supercomputer system that served as the nerve center of Titan's information highway. He needed access, and for that, he required a high-low, a holographic enhanced information link orbital. Soon he found himself standing under one of the public high-lows, its large ring glowing with potential. He raised his hand, and the device activated, recognizing the intent if not the individual. A gossamer veil of light cascaded down around him, forming a virtual interface with seductive efficiency. Sidodva, I need a job. High paying, he said, desperation edging his command. Understood, Morace. The AI's effeminate voice responded, soothing yet unnervingly indifferent to his plight. Please, stand by. Holographic screens splayed out before him, each flickering with opportunities. It was a gambit, a roll of the dice in a city that thrived on chance and chaos. But if he was going to survive Sivalti's ultimatum, he'd need every advantage this world and Sidodva could provide. The hilo hummed to life above Morace, casting a halo of light that shimmered with the promise of escape from his debts. He stretched his fingers, reaching towards the virtual screens that materialized around him like petals unfurling in an alien bloom. Display job listings, Morrissey commanded, his voice steady despite the turmoil brewing within. Accessing, Morates. Sidodva's voice purred, a symphony of femininity woven into each syllable. It was a voice designed to comfort, yet it only underscored his urgency. An array of holographic panels danced before his eyes, each tagged with potential earnings. There were listings for carpenters needed to shape the biometallic frameworks of Neo Jersey's ever-growing skyline. Gizareth heart tissue deliveries promised hazardous journeys, but lucrative pay for those willing to transport the pulsating organs that powered high-end biotech. Xenomycologists and disease specialists were sought after for their expertise in handling off-world pathogens. A nod to Titan's status as a melting pot of galactic cultures and the ailments they carried. But then, the bounty hunter jobs illuminated the darkest corner of the display, their payouts eclipsing the others by margins that made Morace's heart race. Focus on those, he said, a tinge of greed mixing with desperation. Affirmative, Sidodva cooed. The panels rearranged themselves, prioritizing the hunt over honest labor. Vrax the Scaled, Sidodva began, conjuring the hologram of a serpentine being with scales that refracted the light into sinister rainbows. Wanted for a series of armed robberies across the Jovian moons. Reward, 15,000 Utahs. Next, Morace urged, barely glancing at the criminal visage. Dulrek of the Nebulous Eye, the AI continued, replacing Vrax with a nebulous form that seemed to stare into Morace's soul. Cybernetic espionage and theft of quantum encryption codes. Reward, 20,000 Utahs. Morace felt a flutter of hope, but it wasn't enough. Keep going. Zifra Quill, Sidodva announced as a creature adorned with barbed quills appeared, each one glistening with venomous intent. Piracy and illegal distribution of controlled exotics. Reward, 25,000 UTAs. He shook his head. Time was his enemy, not just Sivalti. Is there anything higher? Brian Lislevant, the AI intoned, and the space before Morace filled with the image of a man whose eyes bore the chill of space itself. Reward 50,000 Utahs. Stop! Morashi cut in, his pulse quickening. That's more than a year's salary. Indeed, Morris, Sadodva confirmed. The hologram of Brian Lislevant, rotating slowly, displaying the man from every angle, as if to etch his likeness into Morris's memory. Would you like to proceed with this inquiry? Gritting his teeth, Morache knew the risks paled in comparison to the certainty of Savalti's wrath. Yes, tell me everything. Morache's fingers hovered above the glowing hilo, ready to beckon further details from the effervescent Sadodva. The AI's voice, syrupy and smooth, filled the dimly lit room as a hologram of Brian Lislevant materialized before him. The image was sharp, every line on the man's face etched with precision in the flickering light. Brian Lislevant, Sadodva purred, is a businessman known for his frigid composure and shrewdness. He controls a vast network that excavates and transports rare minerals from the depths of Titan's icy crust. The hologram zoomed in on Lislevant's cold eyes, mirroring the chill of Saturn's orbit. Moreover, Sadodva continued, her voice taking on a grave timbre, he is implicated in multiple homicides, spanning several celestial bodies, Earth, Triton, Rhea, and naturally, our very own Titan. The hologram shifted to display various dossiers, labeled with stark, red, wanted stamps across them. In addition, he faces charges for smuggling norpentamine, an illicit substance, into the Sol system from the Sudana star system. Moresh's jaw clenched. The stakes were as high as the reward. And you're telling me this guy is worth 50,000 Utaze alive? He asked, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. Affirmative, Sadodva replied, her tone suddenly motherly, tinged with concern. However, I must counsel against pursuing Mr. Lislevant. You lack both combat training and weaponry. He is considered highly dangerous, and your probability of success is negligible. Damn it, Morace hissed under his breath, squeezing the bridge of his nose. What are the terms for the bounty? The bounty stipulates 50,000 Utahs for live capture and 20,000 Utahs if deceased, Sadodva explained, her holographic form casting a soft glow over Morace's troubled expression. Fuck! Morace exclaimed, slamming his fist against the side of the Hilo console. The device wobbled slightly but remained intact. His mind raced, grappling with the enormity of the task. How the hell do I capture a gangster like him alive? The holographic image of Lislevant continued to rotate slowly, a silent challenge hanging between the ethereal projections and the palpable desperation etched on Morace's face. Later that day at the fire pit bar and grill, Morris's fingers thrummed a nervous cadence on the table as he laid out his plan to his friend Kelton, who was shaking his head before Morace even finished speaking. Are you out of your mind? Kelton's voice rose an octave, incredulity painting every word. You're going to get yourself killed chasing after Lislevant with nothing but guts and good intentions. Got any better ideas? Morace retorted, the edges of desperation sharpening his tone. Savalti isn't known for his patience or forgiveness. I've got 2 days, Kelton. 2 days. Kelton sighed, the sound heavy with unspoken fears. You're more likely to catch a verticron round between the eyes than that bounty. But if you're set on the suicide mission, then let's at least get you equipped. The decision made, they stepped into the bustling heart of downtown New Jersey. The city's arteries were clogged with life. Human and alien pedestrians flowed in continuous streams among the storefronts, advertising all manners of goods and services. The clang of metal, the whirring of machinery, and the cacophony of 100 languages filled the air like an exotic symphony. Above them, giant gravity modulators turned slowly against the backdrop of Titan's hazy orange sky. These colossal cubes, suspended high above the cityscape, gave off a soft hum as they rotated, their purpose twofold: to simulate Earth's gravity and regulate the thick, nitrogen-rich atmosphere. Their presence allowed settlers like Morace to walk the streets without the encumbrance of bulky spacesuits, a small mercy in a life fraught with peril. "Look," Kelton said, pointing to one of the levitating structures. "Without those, we'd be flat on our backs, gasping like fish out of water." He tried to lighten the mood, but his attempt fell flat in the seriousness of their endeavor. "Let's just find what we need and get out," Morace muttered, eyes scanning the scene in front of him. His gaze darted from the neon signs of a tech emporium to the shadowy entrance of a weapons dealer, all while trying to ignore the pit gnawing at his stomach. Time was slipping through his fingers, and with each passing second, Savalti's threat loomed larger. As they pushed through the crowd, Morace couldn't shake the feeling that every step took him further from safety and deeper into a world where he might not belong. But it was a world that held his only shot at survival. Morace trailed after Kelton, the neon glow of downtown Jersey slowly dimming as they approached a quaint establishment nestled between a cybernetic mod shop and a hoverbike dealership. The sign above read Galaxia Gourmet. In swirling letters, an array of colorful pastries painted beside the words that promised delights beyond the ordinary. The bell chimed softly as they entered, and Morace's senses were immediately besieged by the rich aromas that filled the bakery. It was an olfactory tapestry woven with the sweet, spicy, and savory scents of 1,000 different worlds. The display case was a kaleidoscope of colors, each shelf lined with pastries so vibrant and varied, they seemed almost alive. "Is that—" Morace pointed to a tray of cookies, shimmering with a metallic sheen. "Yep," Kelton nodded. "Sedana spider ichor. Gives him a kick and makes your tongue tingle." He then gestured towards a cake with scales instead of frosting. "And those are made with Chortundi lizard scales from the Marconi system. Crunchy on the outside, surprisingly creamy on the inside." "Never seen anything like it," Morace admitted, his apprehension momentarily forgotten as he took in the bizarre assortment of baked goods. "Wait till you try one," Kelton said with a grin, turning to the clerk behind the counter, a tall creature with more arms than Morace could quickly count. "Hey, you got any Quantilip cakes today?" The clerk's multitude of eyes narrowed, giving Kelton an ominous look. "Sorry, we're fresh out, but," the creature said, leaning forward conspiratorially, "we might have something else you'd be interested in." With a nod from the clerk, they were ushered through a door marked "Employees Only" and into the back room where sacks of flour towered like miniature silos. At the far end was a small office, its door ajar, spilling soft light onto the floor. "Here we are," Kelton murmured, propelling Morace forward. Inside the office sat a very short alien with yellow skin and 4 green eyes that sparkled with intelligence. From her back, a cluster of tentacles swayed gracefully, each tipped with what looked like delicate fingers. Her name, Morace learned, was Quesnothica, and when she saw Kelton, her lips stretched into a wide smile, revealing rows of small, sharp teeth. "Kelton, it's been too long." Quesnothica's voice was melodic, her Titan accented, common surprisingly clear. "Too long indeed, Quesnothica," Kelton replied warmly. "I've brought someone I want you to meet. This is Moritz. He's in need of some assistance." Her eyes flicked over to Morris, sizing him up with a gaze that missed nothing. "Any friend of Kelton's," she began, her tentacles moving to gesture Morris closer. Morace stepped forward, aware that this diminutive being held more power in her tentacle tips than most did in their entire bodies. Kelton stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Kesnothica, a gentle embrace that seemed to envelop the diminutive alien. She reciprocated with several tentacles, patting him on the back fondly. Remember when you used to chase my hatchlings around the bakery? She reminisced, her eyes glinting with nostalgia. They're all grown now, out on their own ventures. 30 of them, can you believe it? Time flies on Titan, Kelton chuckled. How's the brood doing? Thriving, Kesnothika replied proudly. But enough about me. What brings you to my back office with this human? Her gaze shifted to Morace, who shuffled uncomfortably under her scrutiny. Kesnothika, he's in deep, Kelton said earnestly. He needs gear, and he's willing to pay for it after the job is done. Is that so? She mused, turning fully towards Morace. High stakes, I presume. Tell me about this payoff. Morace swallowed hard, his throat dry. It's a bounty, 50,000 yutas, more than enough to cover expenses and interest. Sounds lucrative, she agreed, her tone indicating she was no stranger to high-risk transactions. I can provide what you need, but it comes at a price. Of course, Morace nodded, the weight of desperation apparent in his voice. Just let me finish the job first. Terms are non-negotiable, Morace, Kesnothika stated firmly. From beneath her desk, she produced an electronic Zekel pad, its screen glowing ominously. You sign this and I'll give you the tools you require. Let me see that, Morace said, reaching for the pad as he read the text scrolling across the screen. It detailed a grim contract. In the event of his demise, all rights to his organs and belongings would transfer to Kesnothika. His finger hovered over the digital line, hesitation etched onto his face. 3 days, Morace, she reminded him, her voice softening ever so slightly. Sign it and you have a chance to clear your debts. Don't, and well. Okay, Morace muttered, pressing his thumb onto the pad. The device beeped, confirming his consent with an electronic chirp. Very well, Kesnothika said, a hint of satisfaction coloring her words. 2 hulking figures emerged from the shadows behind her. Their red skin contrasted starkly against the paleness of the flour sacks outside her office. With deliberate movements, they beckoned Morace to follow. Come, one grunted, his voice like gravel tumbling down a slope. Morace glanced back at Kelton, who gave him a sympathetic nod before following the guards. They ascended a narrow staircase, the steps groaning under the weight of the Farinorian muscle. At the top, they were met by a broad rooftop that opened up to a sight that left Morace breathless. A formidable armory. Rows upon rows of weapons gleamed under the artificial lights, promising violence and salvation in equal measure. Morace's eyes scanned the arsenal, the reality of his undertaking settling heavily upon him. He had just signed away his life, or what little remained of it if he failed. Now armed with more than just determination, he knew the true gravity of the path ahead. Kesnothika's tentacles undulated with a hypnotic grace as she reached for a sleek object nestled between more brutish-looking firearms. Her movements were precise, the practiced ease of one who knew her inventory like the back of her hand. Or in her case, the suction cups of her tentacles. This is the KG-67 Verticron pistol, she announced, placing the compact weapon into Morace's outstretched hands. Its metal was cool and seemed to hum with latent potential. Notice the laser pointer for accuracy, and the smart track feature. It adapts to wind currents, material density, and distance before firing. Morace hefted it, feeling its weight, light but reassuring. The gun had an aura of lethality that belied its size. How much, he asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. 5,000 utes on return, she said, her voice firm. Only if you survive, of course. His lips tightened into a grim line. 5,000 less from the bounty, if he managed to get out of this alive. He gave a short nod, acknowledging the terms. Survival first, payment later. Next, the Piddlemites. Kwasnotica waved a tentacle over a small container. Inside, a cluster of minuscule insects buzzed restlessly. These will be your eyes and ears in the city. They'll find Brian for you. The mites were so tiny, Morace wondered how they could hold any useful information. But then he remembered the Sedodva AI's capabilities and figured these little bugs were probably just another tech miracle. 2,000 utes for their service, she continued, payable upon successful capture of your target. Deal, he said without hesitation. The price of failure wasn't just monetary. Savalti's threat still echoed in his mind. He needed every asset he could get, even if it meant indebting himself further. Good. She handed him the container, her green eyes appraising him. There was a hint of something in her gaze, a mix of pity and calculation. You're going to need all the help you can get, human. With the pistol and the piddlemites now in his possession, Morace felt a surge of determination. It was a dangerous game he was about to play, but the stakes were too high to back down now. Kwasnothika's tentacles unfurled, gesturing towards a rack of clothing that appeared deceptively ordinary. These, she announced, her voice tinged with the pride of a merchant unveiling their finest wares, are variable density, adaptive armor clothes. Morace stepped closer, eyeing the garments that hung loosely on their hangers. They looked like any regular attire one might wear around Neo Jersey. But as his fingers brushed against the fabric, he could feel an unexpected firmness. Tiny sensors are woven into every thread, Kwasnothika explained, watching him closely. They can detect high-speed projectiles and instantly stiffen to protect you. She gave a dismissive flick of a tentacle. Useless against lasers, but it'll give you a fighting chance against verticron weapons or any other primitive slug throwers. Primitive, Morace repeated under his breath, contemplating the irony of needing such old-school protection in this age of advanced technology. His hand lingered on the fabric, now understanding the life-saving potential it held. 3,000 utias, she stated flatly, her calculating eyes betraying no room for negotiation. Done, Morace replied without a moment's hesitation, sealing another deal that dug his debt even deeper. He equipped himself with the armor, feeling the weight of both the clothing and the immense task ahead settle upon his shoulders. Where do you think you're going? Kwasnothika's voice halted him as he made for the door, her question sharp in the quiet of the storeroom. Out there, Morace said, pointing vaguely toward the streets of Neo Jersey that buzzed with life beyond the walls of the bakery. I'll release the piddlemites and wait for them to sniff out Brian's trail. Then what? She pressed, her many eyes narrowing with skepticism. Then I find him, stun him first, Morace answered, trying to sound more confident than he felt, and get his body to a car. Kelton's handling the rental. Stun him first, she echoed, her tone laced with sarcasm. Just like that, as if he'd be waiting for you with open arms. He met her gaze, defiance flaring within him, despite the doubt that gnawed at his resolve. The stakes were monumentally higher than any other risk he'd ever taken. Yet the alternative was a fate far worse. Or not at all, Morace added quietly, the gravity of the situation sinking in. I've got 2 days, Kwasnothika. 2 days before Savalti decides I'm better off as space dust. Kelton's hand landed with a reassuring thump on Morace's back, the weight of his friend's farewell settling in his heart. I'm sorry, man, Kelton said, the corners of his lips downturned in a regretful smile. But this is your fight. Good luck. Take care, Kelton. Morace managed a nod, watching as his closest ally retreated toward the bakery's entrance. Kwasnothika's laughter bubbled through the air like the carbonation of a freshly opened can of Xanthi Cola. Don't be a stranger, Kelton, she called after him, her voice carrying the warmth of their long history. Once Kelton had vanished from sight, Kwasnothika's gaze flickered to Morace, four green eyes locking onto him with a mixture of amusement and concern. Honey, she began, her tentacles undulating gently behind her. You'd be dead within 6 hours if you go with that plan. Morace shrugged, the armor's fabric shifting around his body with the movement. It was a small comfort against his looming demise. Got any better ideas? Her smile widened, revealing rows of tiny, serrated teeth. Her tentacles crossed in front of her like arms folding in thought. Follow me, human, she commanded, turning on her heel, or what would have been a heel if her physiology permitted, her form slipping through the door behind the counter. He trailed behind her, each step a march into the unknown. The cool air of the bakery giving way to an ambient warmth as they entered a dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with shelves filled with exotic spices and ingredients, casting long shadows that seemed to dance as they walked past. Plan A was never going to work, Kwasnautica continued, without looking back, her voice echoing off the metal walls. Brian Lislevan isn't some low-level thug. He's a shark, swimming in the depths of a very dark ocean. Then help me find a harpoon, Morace said, the metaphor not lost on him, but his determination unwavering. Patience, she chided softly. We're almost there. Emerging into a larger space, the two were enveloped by the hum of machinery. Kwasnautica gestured to a series of monitors and equipment that blinked and whirred with life. This, she said with a hint of pride, is where we begin crafting a real plan. Morace watched her tentacles expertly navigate the consoles, bringing up hollow screens with maps and data streams. A hub of information that could perhaps turn the tide in his favor. His pulse quickened at the prospect of evening the odds, even if just slightly. Let's make you a hunter worthy of his prey, Kwasnautica murmured, her attention fixed on the glowing screens before them. Morace's eyes widened as he turned to Kwasnautica. Something tells me you haven't been a baker for your entire life, have you?